amazing people! Welcome back to another episode of Genie Guardians for the World.
In this week's episode, we're in Tennessee. We are exploring the Natchez Trace Parkway, along with the Meriwether Lewis Park and National Monument.
It was absolutely awesome, and hopefully you guys will stick around afterwards as we make s'mores on our Slinky Stove, and we talk a little bit about our experience at Meriwether Lewis Monument and whether or not it was murder or suicide. Stick around. Thank you. We'll see you afterwards.
We're gonna reach for leaves out of the truck. Let's see if we get some. If I got some. If I got some. Nope, I reached for the branch.
So the Natchez Trace started by animals.
Okay.
There were salt licks up in Nashville.
Yeah.
And the woodlands buffalo, which are bigger than the plains buffaloes, and the animals would go up to the salt licks. And they didn't go up and down and up and down, they followed the ridge.
Okay.
And then finally, the Native Americans got here. And they created communities and trade, and they made it a trail.
Okay.
And then the settlers got here, and they made it more of a road. It was one of the most important trails in America from the late 1700s to the 1820s, and one of the most heavily used.
Really?
And it was one way. Now, it was both ways, but mostly one way. So come on over here.
Right here.
So back then, late 1700s into the 1820s, this was America.
I didn't know anything about this.
We didn't know anything about this. America was east of the Mississippi River.
Makes sense.
The mountains, there's mountains that go from Maine all the way to Alabama. This was the eastern United States. This was the western United States. And this is the Northwest. This is the Old Southwest. So if ever you hear reference to the Old Southwest, they don't mean here, they mean here. Natchez Trace from Natchez up to Nashville. In 1800, it's declared a postal road by law.
Okay.
That's why the postal rider is the logo.
Yeah, we have read about that at one of the other stops.
Great, fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm glad. So I said it was basically one-way traffic. So this is the Ohio River. This is the Ohio River Valley. They produce goods up here. They would build flat-bottom boats, take the stuff down the Ohio River, down the Mississippi, sell it in Natchez or New Orleans. They would take the boats apart and sell the lumber.
Oh, wow. So it's like a one-trip use.
Right, one-way trip, because they weren't taking a flat-bottom boat back up the Mississippi.
Right.
So they would walk back up.
That makes sense. Makes sense?
The Natchez Trace Parkway is 444 miles long, averaging 800 feet wide. The Natchez Trace at that point was over 500 miles long.
Oh, wow.
And they would walk it in 20 to 30 days.
They were hoofing it.
25, 30 miles a day. Yep. Yep. So when they made it a postal road, they started building stands or inns. Inn is too glorious of a word. So Meriwether Lewis made this one famous because he went no further. Right? The guys that did the trip, the boat trip, were called cane tucks. Nobody knows why. Right? Maybe they were from Kentucky.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe because they did polling. It was called caning. Who knows?
That could be.
It's estimated in 1800 about 1,000 cane tucks went up the trail. By 1810, estimated 3,000 to 5,000.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
So, the trail was also used. Thousands of slaves were marched down the trail. Andrew Jackson, War of 1812, he marched the army on the trail. And again, trace is French for trail. So,
yeah.
And it was just a heavily used trail.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about, it never dawned on me that they would come down the river and then have to walk back up.
Right.
And then, I don't know why, but it never...
Right. We don't think about it. We're not boat people.
No, we just get in the car and go both ways.
Right. Exactly. But, it was used both ways, but the majority were back up.
Yeah, because it'd be impossible to get your boat to go back up the river.
So, 1820s, we had paddle boats.
And those can go back up.
Those can go back up. So, nobody's walking now.
Yeah.
Paddle boats took over the trade. So 1820s, 30s, 40s, 50s, it's less used.
So do you remember in your history class we talked about transportation and how important, like in the early days, you walked everywhere, then the boats came, then the cars came, and all of that? That's what he's talking about. The paddle boats made it so the boat had the engine and it could go back up the river, as opposed to having to take the boat apart. Does that make sense to you? Yeah.
Called Grinder Stand. Mm-hmm. He spent the night here, depression, despair. Do you want me to go into that?
Sure.
Sure.
2 shots rang out in the night. So he was on his way. He was governor of the Upper Louisiana Territory. He sent the bills, so he was governor. Jefferson appointed him governor in 1807.
Yeah.
He didn't go there until 1808. That's how excited he was for that job. 1809, now Madison is president. he sent the bills to Washington because it costs money to run a government.
Yeah.
And the War Department refused to pay it for it. So he's on his way to Washington to say you have to pay these. He thought he would go down the Mississippi, jump on a ship in New Orleans, and go around. Because again, at that point of history, water was the fastest. Well, he got as far as Fort Pickering. He's sick. Friend there is a commander there was a friend of his. Kept him there, got better. They heard that the British were causing a ruckus down here. Had his journals with him. Didn't want them to fall into British hands. So he decided to come over and come up the trace. Depression, despair. Two shots rang in the night. One in the chest, one in the head. And it still took him hours to die.
Wow.
And there's the whole thing of, was it suicide or was it murder? Was it murder, was it suicide? I believe it was suicide because he had hours to say, somebody came in and shot me, never said that. What he did say, this is paraphrasing, I have done the deed, my good servant, bring me water. He begged his servant, who was a freed slave, to finish him off in the night. The servant didn't do that. But I had a lady in here yesterday, she wrote a book on it.
Really?
And she believes it was murder.
Because there were 2 shots.
Not because of that, but just the other reason, and it gets complicated.
There's a lot of different theories out there.
Right. So for me, are you familiar with Occam's razor?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If there's one thing with 2 possible situations, it's typically the simpler one. That is and suicide is the simpler one. Murder has too many people involved. You know, it was the guy that was the second in command here, didn't like him, or it was this one, or it was that one. Occam's razor. So, and like I said, he is buried underneath the monument.
Cool.
He died in 1809. He was buried right away. Back then, they didn't embalm you and have a viewing. They buried you. 1843, Tennessee, the state of Tennessee made this Lewis County. And in 1848, they put together $500 to build the monument. When they built it, they exhumed his body, made sure he was there, and built that on top of him.
Oh, wow.
You'll notice that the pillar is broken. That is an ancient representation of a life cut short.
Okay.
And that's in any burial situation. If ever you see a pillar that's broken, that person died too young. And that's even in normal graveyards.
That's interesting.
So.
back is what she says. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed our little video there about Meriwether Lewis Monument and the Natchez Parkway. Had a lot of fun there. We drove on the Natchez Parkway, which was for the old cowboys. They used to march up there, but it started how?
By buffaloes and then the Indians.
Buffalo came first. Yep, Buffalo made the path. The Native Americans came. They found the path. And then as we kind of migrated this way, we found the path. We made it bigger, and now it's turned into what was, I guess, well, as we learned, the most famous pathway back in that day. So everything traveled up the Natchez Parkway. It was absolutely stunning.
Except for sharks. They didn't know.
There was no sharks.
There were no walking sharks.
No sharks. No sharks.
No sharks.
Dean tried to catch some leaves as we were driving out the truck. Fail. Dean failed. Couldn't grab any leaves off the branches.
I did try one, but the branch.
Hey, anyways, we've got our marshmallows, our graham crackers,
Our slinky stove.
mini slinky stove, which is really awesome, by the way.
Link in the bio.
So we're gonna make some s'mores.
Oh,
So Dean, Natchez Parkway, we drove the little drive. We had fun there. You need help with yours? And we learned that the cowboys used to do that trace and the buffalo and everything else. And then we went to Meriwether Lewis.
Monument.
I like the monument. I like the monument. Fun fact, guys. Did you know at the top of the monument there was a slash? That means it wasn't like he was broke and then he died at a young age. He didn't die at old age. He died at young age.
Yeah, so life taken too short. We learned that too. The broken pillar. Yeah.
And it was interesting to think about the fact that, you know, he was trying to make his way to Washington, D.C. to give his papers from his explorations in the West, I guess is the best way to put it. And so he was just really trying to get there as quickly as possible, but he had been battling malaria, so he wasn't in the best of health. And when you think about that, at that time period, we are prior to the Revolutionary War. So if those documents and papers would have fallen into British hands, what
Was it
kind of
prior or during? Prior.
what kind of information would the British have had about the Western capabilities of the American colonies and what was out there and how far it went and the land and all of that? So it's really amazing when you think about the fact that nobody really knows if it was murder or suicide. If it was murder, somebody had to get into his room and shoot him twice. If it was suicide, he literally had to shoot himself with a black powder gun twice. How does that happen?
Probably.
I think it was murder. I think it was suicide. Because they would have paid him.
Sorry. Try this.
So, yeah, I mean, that part of history was really interesting. I didn't realize as much as I should have about the Natchez Trace before we got there. You know, we're so used to our amenities, our cars that go both ways on the highway, and
Okay, ready? Where's your
you know, they
chocolate?
couldn't
You're
do that.
already eating all
Everything
yours.
went down to
No.
Mississippi and then had to come back up the trace.
Oh my gosh. You broke your.
So it was really cool. I thought it was great.
Okay.
What'd you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I thought, I mean, I had no idea. And for me, it was more like very humbling to just go back to where Meriwether Lewis, you know, the monument of where he passed away, whether it was murder or suicide.
And the cabin's right there.
Yeah.
For us as full-time travelers and traveling and just knowing that the course that we're getting ready to take this summer, doing all the West Coast, we're doing a lot of the things that they discovered for the first time here in the United States. So that's exciting. Like you know, for me it was very humbling to be there and be in that moment, and then to find out all of the other stuff that his death was shrouded in mystery, and was it murder or was it suicide? And you know, it was like really great. I think we're gonna do like another episode on this one, but we went to this other museum there where
It's It's a community divided.
Yeah, so the other museum had this gal told us there that she was 100% convinced that it was murder, and the family that had left with money and like all of these things. She had all of this conspiracy stuff. Where this gentleman and this one was like, you know,
He worked for the National Park Service.
right, and he was also
But he was
like,
super sweet, and he was very knowledgeable, and he was awesome with the kids. Super
Yeah.
great.
but he was also just like, you know, the path of less resistance, and
I think we're going to use that.
we're gonna need some napkins.
But I
Gertie
mean,
did hers with white chocolate. Gertie did hers with white chocolate. And
I did mine with dark chocolate.
I'm doing mine
Yeah.
with
Hazelnut.
hazelnut.
I highly
chocolate.
recommend if you're a history buff and you're interested in kind of a puzzle and just looking into something, I highly recommend going and checking out the Natchez Trace, checking out the Lewis Meriwether Park, going to the monument. I don't know, all of those pioneer graves at the park and taking you back into history.
Yeah, that
to
was
see
a
that.
little.
It was
Like,
a little heavy.
I wasn't sure what to think, and as we started kind of walking towards the pillar, the monument there for Meriwether, and like they hadn't really taken a lot of good care of them, so there was like overgrown grass, and we took it upon ourselves. I don't know if we're going to trouble for it or not, but we kind of cleaned up several of them, and kind of paid our respects to those people that had traveled there before us.
We
And-
put flowers on their face.
Yeah, Dean and Gertie put flowers on the monument. It took a little bit of time for us to, you know, reflect on what his life was like and the struggles that he had.
And what he gave all of us, like this amazing country, all of the states. There were people that struggled to give this to us. There were people that lost a lot to give this to us. So, you know, just paying a little homage
Gold and
to
brown.
that was
Gertie.
great. And being able to teach the kids about that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was cool. And that gentleman was very, very nice. And he shed a lot of knowledge. And the museum there was pretty cool. They had a little bit of this and that about their trip and their expedition. And then the history trail too. You kind of walked on there, and it had several things that you could learn about what happened.
I
And
think my mom was just.
You can camp in Meriwether Park. There is camping there. Again, we stayed at the Thousand Trails, Natchez Trace, and that's where we were located. Not a bad park. So
no, I think if
there's
you have
places
kids,
if you're looking to go that you can stay within that area and again enjoy yourself.
yeah, I mean, I didn't mind the Thousand Trails Natchez. It was huge. Like the park itself was massive. They had a lot of green space. They had a lake that you could swim and boat in. They had some really cool hiking trails. A little playground area up on the third part of the campground was kind of in 3 sections. They did have a spot for some larger 50 amp service that was right by the lake, but it was very limited. Like you were parked right on the lake, which was really cool. We ended up on the 3rd tier, up in the further back. A couple of big hills we had to go back to get there, but we ended up parking right around the campground there. We met some amazing families that weekend, so that was pretty cool. And the kids got to play at the playground, and you know we could watch them out the window, which was nice and convenient. And then it was really close to like all that historical stuff, the monument, Davy Crockett State Park, the elephant sanctuary, and this other. The city of Hollenwald or whatever had a little, I don't even know what to call it, museum.
Yeah.
But if you haven't checked us out on our other videos, go and check us out.
Yeah, check this out.
After
That museum, I can't wait to share that stuff because that one was fun. That one was, I don't even know,
Again, she
it
was
was
just
very,
an awesome lady.
she was very awesome, but she was like set that it was murder
Oh yeah.
and had the guns and the whole story, and you know, so it was really cool for us to kind of get both sides of it from a townie perspective versus the state park perspective, and you know,
It
you
definitely
kind of,
would have been a mystery on one of those true crime shows.
oh, it totally should be, yeah.
If one of you guys are watching it, you should do it.
I don't know that they're going to be able to uncover that. I mean, there's just so
Yeah, just mark it as a mystery mark.
Mystery mark.
That'll be
Mystery
fine.
bomb.
Mystery bomb. Just throw it out of the case.
Yeah.
That'll be fine.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our video. If you're checking out our stuff, again, this is a Slinky stove. Amazing Slinky stove. Just so you know, comes up to here, and you can grill on it, or you can drop it down and do what we just did.
And there's a bigger version of
It
And
drops
do-
down pretty. It drops down.
Drops down one more tier too,
Maybe.
but it's hot, so I don't want to get burned.
There you go.
Oh, look! And I didn't burn myself. There's
So we could have got a marshmallow a little bit closer if we wanted to.
probably burn them all.
Wow.
It comes with a little grate, so you could do grilling, but it's just perfect for your campsite.
Yeah, this thing's pretty chill. They do have a couple of bigger sizes if you're looking for them.
Yeah.
I'll drop a link in the
Bio.
not in the bio,
What's a
in the
bio?
description.
Yeah.
Dean's stuck in some other social media platform with his bios.
What's a bio?
But thank you again for everything. If you like what you see and you want to follow us, please like and subscribe to our channel. Also, if there's any information that you're looking for, please let us know. We'd love to help you on your next journey to Tennessee to check out the Meriwether Monument. Jeff, what else do you have to say?
Hazelnut chocolate, some more for the win. What's your favorite? I've put Reese's in there. I've had Zero in there with the white chocolate. The hazelnut, I have to say, it's pretty good.
I like mine with dark chocolate. It wasn't as sweet. And
Guys.
it wasn't as sweet as normal chocolate is, but it's still good. But guys,
Gertie had what?
I had a white chocolate. Guys, but if you know what it is, and never stop dancing, but guys, if you guys know what a bio is, please comment it. Because I don't know what it is.
What is?
Or
A
what is-
bio.
A
Oh
bio.
gosh.
Somebody
Alright.
please comment.
Well,
Help
thanks,
me.
guys.
Bum, 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 bum,
We'll update Gertie's bio.
bum.